The number one cause of death within the ranks of Albuquerque's police department has been reported as COVID. Speculation now brewing that the next Supreme Court nominee will be a black woman, and the Confederates are already screaming. The governor is proposing eliminating Social Security tax. Yes. Demonstrations to stop the war and marches on Los Alamos labs against new nukes. And a scheduled hearing has finally happened in the Stephen Baca case. Stay tuned. These stories and more coming up. Good morning, Albuquerque, and welcome to another edition of That Saturday Show, brought to you by the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice, your voice and your advocate for social justice. I'm Jim Harvey, your host, and it's great to be back with you again. We have a terrific show lined up today, including wonderful music. But first, let me get this off my chest. Now, y'all, remember this name, Representative Rebecca Dow. She's a state representative who obviously doesn't have an original thought in her Confederate Party pea brain. It seems that Dow just learned that the state public education department has proposed sweeping changes to the curriculum in New Mexico with important additions to social studies and history and other key subjects that would include honest discussions about, get this, the history of blacks in America and in New Mexico. This backwards Confederate Party member, Dow, has taken a page right out of the newly elected Virginia governor's playbook and is calling this inclusive education critical race theory. How stupid and how self-serving can you get? Representative Dow, first off, no one is proposing critical race theory be taught in our schools. It would not even be appropriate because CRT is designed primarily for law students to examine and study how laws and the U.S. Constitution affect and impact black lives and legal representation of law in this country. Second, opposition to inclusion of this inclusive black history, which I might add is American history, is a clear and transparent attempt to launch a real attack on racial justice, something that is badly needed in this country. This woman is not interested in education of children in New Mexico. She just wants to rally the other racists in the state and help her get elected the same way the Virginia governor did. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, Rebecca Dow. You are showing us that you are both dumb and self-serving. Those of us who understand the importance of truth-telling and truth-teaching recognize that attempts to rewrite history and snuff out the history of racism in the U.S. are enemies of truth and democracy. And those who fear their children will experience discomfort and guilt by learning about African Americans and our journey in this country need not hide behind their displaced feelings, but they need to be honest and admit that truth is the best healer. But then, is that what really concerns you? I know that honest discussions about anti-racism and even simpler conversations for the factually challenged about black history can result in enlightened people who tend to not act like MAGA mob fools. I'm reminded of a recent incident in Florida where a man was invited to lecture educators from across the state on the history of the civil rights movement, only to have the lecture canceled by the governor's people, citing it was critical race theory. Dummies, dummies. As a reason, they use this as the reason. So weaponizing CRT as a political tool for a racist agenda is what is really happening here and around the country, unfortunately, after 400 years of white America doing its level best to treat black people at their very worst. Now, final thought. Those of you who are unvaccinated, all right, if you're going to insist on doing that, despite the fact that over 200,000 unvaccinated people in America have already died from COVID, if you insist on doing this still, do us all a favor and at least follow the safety protocols. Wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your distance, and get tested as often as you possibly can. And with that, I want to welcome to that Saturday show Joaquin Baca. Joaquin Baca is the president of the new Downtown ABQ Core Neighborhood and Business Association, and he's also a director with the Middle Rio Grande, better say that right,
Right.
as long as we still have a Rio Grande, right?
Exactly.
Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District for Bernalillo County, and he's also a water and hydraulics specialist.
Yes.
Joaquin, thank you and welcome to That Saturday Show.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks
So-
for inviting me.
So let's talk about what's going on in downtown
Sure.
for openers.
Yeah, it's different downtown.
Right.
Right. I think, longtime downtown resident or with surrounding neighborhoods, there's always ups and downs here. 2 steps forward, step to the side, step back, maybe 2 more steps forward, sort of thing. These days, it feels like quite a few steps back. Pandemic obviously has a lot of that to do with that. Nationwide, there's a rise in crime. And so it's happening here, just like everywhere else. There's people who live here. There's residents who live here. A lot of people don't realize from Central to Cole, which is 4 blocks, and from 1st to 8th Street, there's about 1,200 people living in this neighborhood.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's a community. And so, regardless of where we're at, we can all work together and make things better, get it to where we want it to be. I have 2 kids. I want them to feel safe. I want them to have a healthy community. I want them to, as they get older, if they decide to leave, also have the option of saying, you know what, Albuquerque's great. Downtown's great. I want to come back.
Yeah,
That sort of thing.
So what's happening to stabilize the community? What kinds of plans are in place to?
So there's a lot of groups already active, a lot of groups that I'm not involved with, but the farmers market is great. ABQ Main Street is great. The art scene downtown is, it's phenomenal. I'd say the murals here, you don't see that anywhere else.
Right.
There's so many murals. They go up so fast. I haven't seen them all yet. So those are some great things going on. Obviously, the ABQ Core Neighborhood Association. There was an association here several years back, and it went defunct for whatever reason. But a group of us, both residents and businesses, have been coming together to work with the city, to advocate for the neighborhood, to provide that umbrella to all these other groups, to address a lot of the issues that are happening with the city from a policy standpoint. Obviously, there's just so much. The homelessness downtown is difficult. Those are our neighbors in a sense.
Yeah.
We used to be, the kids and I would talk with them and get to know them. And lately it's a bit different. It's a much more transient population. I mean, it's different. Obviously, crime across Albuquerque, downtown gets its share, although it's not as bad as people think.
Yeah.
We have the most police down here, I think, concentrated at times. So it's actually not that bad, or at least not relatively speaking.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was wondering, this is an area that I try to avoid on weekends and the evenings especially. Why is it so difficult to just drive down Central, for example, on a Saturday night?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that we've been very vocal about. The cruise is amazing. We used to always, walking with the kids, family friendly, it goes back generations. There has been a shift in how that's, where it's not just the typical cruise. It's now people late at night, vehicles that are illegal to have on the road. There's been a lot of those, a lot more noise. I think a lot of that has to do with pandemic, people just wanting to get out.
Yeah.
And this is an easy way to do that. That's COVID safe, to be honest. And APDs, they've been working on it with some success. And I think they're just trying different things to try and get there. And there's still a ways to go on that, but it's definitely gotten better. It's not. There's still ways to go. Downtown Central especially has become more walkable in terms of design. A lot of the construction that happened with art actually made it easier to walk with children and families on Central. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
But it exists, and my kids and I walk around. It's a different time right now, though.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful space to walk. You know, I mean, I've walked it several times. You know, just to get familiar with a lot of the shops that have been here for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes this strip so nice, is that, you know, you've got a lot of shops with a lot of wonderful history that if you walk in and you start talking to the shop owners, they can tell you a lot of things about downtown that you wouldn't learn otherwise.
Absolutely. We have the oldest continuously run restaurant across the street.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is great. There's a whole history there about a hotel above it. Living downtown, you get to know your neighbors, right? I walk to work, and pre-pandemic, of course, I'd stop in and grab coffee.
Yeah.
I'd see my neighbors. I mean, it's a community. It's almost, I tell people, it can feel more like living in a rural area as opposed to the suburbs, because it's much more inclusive. You really get to know everybody.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. You know, first time I came to Albuquerque was in 1971, and my recollection of Albuquerque at that time was downtown, because there wasn't much left. There wasn't much else here.
Right.
You know, most of Albuquerque was just one big cow pasture. You
Yeah.
know, and it's really built up since 1971. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really has, and so we've just got great hopes for making it a living downtown, right?
Yeah. Healthy communities, how I view it. And there's a lot of work to do. I think there's a lot of talk about affordable housing, and I think that gentrification being part of that. I think one of the, it's fairly easy to think of affordable housing as just low-income folks, but if you expand it to a healthy community, meaning all folks, everybody being able to have equity in food or transportation, jobs, what have you. Right now, downtown definitely doesn't have affordable housing across the board. You know, an average family wouldn't be able to buy a 3-bedroom downtown. A, because they don't exist. B, the prices are pretty high.
Yeah.
A middle-income family, it's way more than buying a house on the west side or in the Heights. And that's a sticking point for downtown. We definitely need more housing, but we need housing that's affordable to everyone, really, to be honest, to really hit a lot of those things. So.
Yeah, so I was just reading today in the paper where it said that Albuquerque is rapidly losing its reputation, you know, as an affordable housing mecca, and probably one of the first places to go would be an area like downtown.
Yeah,
where people want the convenience.
For sure, and you know, and it's obviously cheaper on the west side or some of these other places just because it's easier to develop down there. But if we look at it through a climate change lens, climate justice lens, that's the most inefficient way for your city to grow is through sprawl. And simultaneously, if you're going to be against sprawl or talk about it, then you can't be against infill. You know, putting things downtown.
Exactly.
You know, there's a lot of that. What's the saying in Albuquerque? Or the saying I've heard many times in Albuquerque is the only thing people hate more than the status quo is change. And that can be, see that a lot down here. So.
Well, speaking of climate justice and climate change, you know, let's talk about what's going on with the Middle Rio Grande and you know, the fact that, you know, it was probably a Freudian slip when I left Rio out of that. But, you know, are we losing our river?
So climate change is here, period. And
no doubt.
And everybody knows that. I don't think people really realize the extent of that. Water is becoming very, very, I mean, it's getting tight for everybody. And that's not going to change. And so, you know, the last couple of years at the Conservancy District, we've cut off water for farmers. We shortened the season, which is really difficult for folks. And that's kind of how that's the lens they look at it. Well, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you're saving the river, or you're hurting our farmers, and that's not really the way to look at it, because, you know, not too recently, an irrigator called me up needing water. He's like, I see the water going flow, can you just get it to me? And I can't, because if I give him water, I'm taking it from someone else.
Right.
I'm taking it, and, you know, it has to be delivered throughout the whole system. And my son saw me talking to this person. You know, when I got off the phone, he's like, what's wrong, Dad? Why you look? I was like, well, he needs water. And That's how he pays his bills. That's how he pays his house. That's how he, buys presents for his kids. And I can't give him water, right? I'm the person he's supposed to help him, and I can't help him. And the issue is, next year we're going to have to shorten the season again. In fact, we've already voted for that. But it's not going to change, right? 5 years from now, we'll still have that situation. And so the conversation has to shift from can I get you water to how can you change what you've done for 100 years for this new world in order to survive in this new world, right? Farming practices have to change. Effectively, I'm telling someone you need to change your identity and everything you've learned from your parents, their parents, and how things have been done, and do something completely different, which is not an easy thing to do. But it goes beyond that because it's not just the farmers, right? This is affecting the state. The bosque that we all love, those trees have reached their lifespan. 10, 15 years, they're all going to be gone. The river system where they grew doesn't exist anymore. You can't just plant a bunch of trees. It's not going to work. We really have, if the environment in the bosque matters to you, we have to shift what that's going to look like into something different, but that's also still valuable to us. And then, of course, it goes towards development, right?
Yeah.
We can't just throw out 100 houses, 1,000 houses. We really need to shift, to what that looks like. I'm a proponent of downtown infill as part of that solution. I like to say we need to redream everything we've thought about the world, at least here in New Mexico, because that world is done. We're now in a new world.
I see, for example, all the open space, West Mesa, South Mesa, and even in town, some large open spans, that could use something happening. But those things happening are not going to be water friendly, are they?
A lot of them won't, right? Yeah. Having trees helps, and it's actually in this weird way that a lot of people don't know. New Mexico used to be very different. Climate was similar, but it's still very dry. But a lot more water, because the water table was higher, and there's different trees and shrubs and everything. And for different reasons, all that got taken away. And so all the arroyos, the dry arroyos we see, they came into existence. But those are actually pretty new in New Mexico history. If you restore some of that stuff and bring back some of those native plants that were originally here, you actually add water to the system. And it's actually better for Albuquerque if you do it the right way. And that's its old discussion right there. But you can actually make things better by adding certain plants and vegetation.
No more elms, no more junipers.
No, you gotta get rid of those.
Get those
gotta
go,
gosh,
right?
if only, right?
Yeah. So what are some of the plans in place? Are people actually talking seriously about reversing this trend? Yeah.
So the district for sure is actually. I like to think we're actually pretty cutting edge as far as New Mexico goes. In terms of we have what we call our conservation program. It was initially started 3 years ago, but it's only now starting to pick up steam. And that allows people to use their water and lease it out in different ways to help out. So if a farmer wants to take off a couple of years, he can do that and still make some money and not worry about losing his water rights or losing income for his family. If you want to do some of that restoration work that I was just describing, some money can go towards that, to adding water to the system, so to speak. A lot of that stuff just didn't exist prior to a few years ago. And then there's an education component. There's a component to help landowners make their farms more efficient, so they're not using as much water. So there's a lot of parts of that are having a difference, and I think over time will have a difference. And the state this last year, because of the drought, picked up some of those and decided to use them. And this coming year, we'll be expanding quite a bit, especially because of the infrastructure dollars are going to have a huge effect on New Mexico, not just statewide, but here in the Middle Rio Grande.
So just cutting back on general water usage each year is still a very helpful but small piece in the process, I imagine.
It's helpful. It's super helpful, but it's also how we do that, right? Like if we're putting housing downtown, multifamily housing, we're going to be more efficient with our water. Right. Nobody wants to get rid of a golf course, but maybe we reuse that water for the golf course, something that's already been used, then do it. The other thing, everybody says don't take a long shower. The water that gets used from Albuquerque pulls water from the river. Everybody uses it, they clean it, and then put it back in the river. So it's actually a negative to not. So it's okay to take a long shower in that sense. It's good for our river system.
And watering lawns and
Xeriscape is the best thing you can do for that, because
Xeriscape.
for houses, that's the biggest use of water is the
Yeah.
lawn by far.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. That's good to know then, because I'm sure we'll be called upon, when summer comes again to
Oh, that's
make
definitely going
certain
to
that
happen for sure.
we
for
do
sure.
what we're supposed to do there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's really good to know. Any other plans for the Conservancy?
Nothing big right now. The Conservancy has gone through a lot of changes lately. It's become we're getting very efficient, very good. A lot of policies in there to really take care of our water, to protect the valley, keeping the valley green is our tagline, and so we're doing a lot for that, and we've been doing it over years, and also expanding on our mission, because we're not just the river or irrigation. We also do flood control within the river. Recreation. I mean, we own the bosque on all the ditches. So if you're out mountain biking out there, if you're on a horseback, that's part of our mission. So we do a lot for that to try and. There's the Acequia Madre project, which it's at Central and the river on the west side. So to redevelop that into kind of a mini biopark sort of thing, but that has a cultural component of the folks that have lived there. The Acequieros and so forth. So a lot of little things that add to the quality of life of Albuquerque.
So we've got about a minute left.
Sure.
And in that time, as a hydrologist, tell us what that is, and you want to editorialize any, on what's happening here?
Hydrologist is water scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to be technical hydrologist, just really doing water studies. And now I do more legal work. And from a cultural perspective, how do we use water as people? It's that thing that water crosses all boundaries all the way, right? La agua es la vida is the tagline, and it's true, right? We all, no matter what, and so that's everything is water, and that's my life. So that's what I do.
So it's safe to say then that it's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot that we can do.
Yeah, in fact, I'm very hopeful for a couple of reasons. One, when there's pressure, there's opportunity to change, and that's a big thing. And it's happening. The Conservancy District itself, like I say, has become very innovative recently in the last few years, and I'm really happy about that and the direction it's going. Also, New Mexico's one of the great things about living here, and I think most people agree, is the sense of culture, the sense of community, a little bit different than other states. And so when something like a drought comes along, it's not, we're just going to fight about it. It's like, let's work together and fix this, because we're all in this together. And I think here we do that better than other places.
That makes me feel a little better, and I think that will make our viewers a little happier. We've all got a role to play. Joaquin Baca, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate
and
it.
sharing this information with us. And with that, let's hear from Hassani with Good News News. Thanks again, Joaquin.
Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to Good News News. I'm your correspondent, Hassani Olugini, and I'm Gugu for Good News. Our first story is a true example of good customer service paying off in the end, because you never know who's watching. Let's explore a little more.
A Dunkin' Donuts employee in Ohio recently received a huge surprise from one of her loyal customers, a fully furnished home. Employee Ebony Johnson met customer Suzanne Burke at the drive-thru window she was serving at 3 years ago. They chatted every time Burke came for her coffee in the mornings, and the two became friendly. When Burke found out that her acquaintance, a mother of 3, had fallen on difficult times and been evicted from her home in Mount Healthy, she made it her mission to help, reaching out to organizations that help people in difficult times. Now enjoying a fully decorated, cozy place to stay.
Now, isn't that good news? Bravo. Always looking to lend a helping hand. He's not heavy. He's my brother. Bravo. Now, let's check in with our favorite sassy grandmother, Little Big Mama. What do you have in store for us today, lady?
Hi, Sonny. I got a question for your viewers. What do you call a cow that just gave birth? Decaffeinated. Now, why did the orange lose the race? Because he ran out of juice. Bye, baby.
Well, the best way to turn a frown upside down is to get Gugu for good news. I'm your correspondent, Hassani Olujimi, and I'll see you right here next time on That Saturday Show with more You Got It Good News.
This is Tom Dent, your director here. We've got two really exciting musical acts coming up on the show. Right after this, we're going to hear from Doug and the Dying. It's hard to describe. They're kind of a kinetic bluegrass rock band. They're really good. I met them at a coffee shop. It was just a fluke meeting. And they're going to be performing February 5th at the launch pad with red light cameras. And Doug and the Dying are going to have their EP release party that night. At the end of the show, you're going to be seeing Sweet Nothins, which is a hard rock band, kind of psychedelic, that's been around for 6 years. So kick back, enjoy the show, and I'll be back later with Jim. Thanks.
My name is Doug, and we are the Dying. And we're excited to show you what we've been working on for the last couple months. Donna, what do you do with heaven's sin? It's like to you the bells are ringing me out of my mind. Oh, you say it's a lovely space for joy and death and decay. Oh, I got tears in my eyes. 'Cause I got time. We had time. Know what's wrong and the search for what is right. 'Cause I got time. And you got time to see what's good and fight for what is right. Days they come and the days they go. Oh, and I've been begging them to slow. Well, there's nothing there can't quite go right. Oh, I know it seems okay, and I know that I am something afraid of everything that's happening in this life we got. So tick tock, everyone stand. Take a quick look at what's in your hand. Some say I'm old-fashioned, but I say it's a beast. 'Cause I got time, and we got time to know what is wrong and to fight for what is right. 'Cause I got time, and you got time to see what's good and know what is so right. Oh, Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Ooh. We're all on the border of delirium. We spent a lot of time in the studio today playing that song again and again and again. And you might have noticed we still fucked it up a little bit. All right. Now.
Joining us in the studio is someone who is not a stranger to That Saturday Show and not a stranger by any source of the imagination, to the struggle that's really important here in the state, and that is public banking and so much more. Rebecca Jasso-Aquilar of the Alliance for Economic Prosperity is back with us again, and this is an important time of year, and we've asked her to come in and give us an update and also give us our marching orders for what we need to do to make certain that HB 47, right?
75.
75.
Yes.
HB 75 gets pushed over the finish line. Welcome back, Rebecca.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be able to speak to socially committed New Mexicans.
All right.
So thank you for having me here.
Glad to have you here. So tell us, where are we now and what do we got to do?
All right. Well, we have a bill for the second time. We have pre-filed a bill. The Public Banking Act is House Bill 75. It is sponsored by Representative Patricia Roybal Caballero
Good people.
and Senator Jeff Steinborn as a co-sponsor. It's only a House bill. Last year, when we first filed it, when we first introduced it, we had a House bill and a Senate bill. This time it's a House bill, and it's been assigned to the House Commerce and Economic Development Committee, which is chaired by Representative Mo Maestas, and then by the House Appropriation and Finance Committee, chaired by Representative Patty Lundstrom.
Okay.
So it hasn't been scheduled yet, and I'll get to what you call the marching orders
Right.
in a minute. But since we are requesting New Mexicans to support this bill. I know, like you said, I've been here before, more than once, more than twice, talking about public banking. But so I would like to just remind people, viewers, what a public bank is. So those who may know about it but don't quite remember, and those who haven't heard about it, they will know a little bit about, at least about what we are asking them to support.
And this is where we get smarter.
Okay, so a public bank is a financial institution funded with public dollars, whether taxes or fees and fines. It is owned by the people through the representative government. We, as the people of New Mexico, would own our state public bank. A public bank's decisions to invest are guided by a purpose or a mission established by the public. Its purpose is to benefit the entire community, not shareholders, not investors, but the entire public. A public bank is not a retail bank, it's a banker's bank. It supports local credit institutions by developing partnerships and establishing loan programs with them. The coexistence of a public bank with credit unions, community banks, and community development financial institutions is harmonious and productive, contrary to what some people might want to make you believe. Last year, we introduced the Public Bank Act bill for the first time. Although we have been at this, promoting the idea of a public bank for over 10 years now. So this time we have a House Bill 75, and it's based on the work of a bank planning committee whose members included state credit union leaders, former community bankers, and finance professors at UNM Anderson School of Management. They spent more than a year developing the Public Bank of New Mexico business model and financial scenarios. This is very important because people want to know what the business plan is and when is it going to start making money, things like that, right?
Sure, and this didn't just come out of thin air.
Right,
There's
exactly.
some work that went into it.
So with the modeling and scenarios that this group considered, the bank would show profit in the second year, even with startup costs included in their calculations. Second year. Operating costs for the bank will not require annual appropriations from the legislature. This is very important. We are not going to be going back to the legislature every year to ask for, to ask for money for operation costs. They will come for one initial one-time $50 million, one-time $50 million appropriation to capitalize the bank. And ultimately, from capital accrued as loans are repaid and interest income is generated.
And these are our tax dollars.
Yes, exactly. Right. These are our tax dollars, our fines, and things like that. And the lending programs that the state public bank with the local institutions, partnering with them, The programs that they will address, or rather these lending programs will address current gaps in investments in entrepreneurial programs, smaller size loans, and longer term loans. So we're talking about loans that typically are not made by community banks or by the large multinational banks that dominate the financial scene here in New Mexico. With the enactment of House Bill 75, the Public Bank of New Mexico, that's what it will be called, would be created as a banker's bank, not a retail bank, and the bank would be managed by its independent board and the bank officials hired by this board. One very important bit of information that I mentioned the last time I was here, but I think it's very powerful. By adding a state public bank to the finance system, in a moderately conservative scenario, a $50 million appropriation to capitalize the bank increases to almost $113 million in equity in 7 years.
Wow.
So this is an equity growth rate of 12.43%. Not
And
bad.
that's
huh?
not even looking at the customers that will be to pay after the door.
Well,
People that will do business with the public bank.
right.
Right.
So that initial investment of $50 million, due to the nature of a bank, lends almost $500 million over the 7 years. That's how banks work.
Right.
Yeah. And if you're interested in knowing more, learning more about the financial plan, the business plan for the bank, the financial details, you can request a copy by going to the information that we have on the slide. You can request it at info@aflep.org.
Info@aflep.org.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And you
that
can have it and look at it and see what we're talking about. So this is basically what we are asking New Mexicans to support. This is the HB House Bill 75, the Public Banking Act, that we are asking you all to please support.
Great.
So, like I was saying, the House Commerce, it's been assigned to the House Commerce and Economic Development Committee, and it hasn't been scheduled yet. So, we would like to ask viewers to call your representative. If you are in a district that the representative belongs to this committee, please call them or email them or text them. The committee meets on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 1:30 p.m. As of today, like I said, House Bill 75 has not been scheduled for today's hearing, or it wasn't scheduled, or I don't know, maybe tomorrow they'll schedule it for
Let's hope so,
Friday.
right.
Let's hope so. But we would ask the committee members to urge the chair, Representative Mo Maestas, to schedule the bill. Now, I'm going to read the names of the representatives and the House district numbers. So if viewers watching us recognize their representative or their district, please contact them and ask them to support us. So Chair Maestas, he's from House District number 16 in Albuquerque. Vice Chair Representative Natalie Figueroa, House District 30, Albuquerque.
That's my rep.
All right,
Yes.
well then please call
All
her.
right.
Representative Rebecca Dow, House District 38, Truth or Consequences. Representative Kelly Fajardo, House District 7, Los Lunas. Representative Doreen Gallegos, House District 52, Las Cruces. Representative Joshua Hernandez, House District 60, Rio Rancho. Representative Wanda Johnson, House District 5, Four Corners area. Representative Javier Martinez, House District 11, Albuquerque. Representative Jane Podrell Colbert, House District 44 Corrales, and Representative Linda Serrato, House District 45 Santa Fe. If any of these representatives are in your House district, please email, text, or call them to urge their support of scheduling this bill. And then, once scheduled, giving HB 75 a do pass vote.
Good. I've got my marching orders. There's 3 on here that I'll be contacting.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you, Jim. Mine is not there. Mine is in the Appropriations and Finance Committee, so it has to
We'll
go
get
through this
there.
hurdle. We'll get there,
We'll get
and
there.
you bet I'll be calling her.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, this bill, this is the second time that we submitted, that we file it, and we're gonna submit it as many times as it takes
Absolutely.
until it gets passed. It's a stronger bill, this one, than the previous one, and you can actually find the actual bill at www.nmlegis.gov. That's the New Mexico Legislature government, under Representative Roybal Caballero's page. And also, we have frequently asked questions about this bill at our website, www.aflep.org. And I would like to invite you to go to our website, because you will find a tremendous amount of information and resources to learn more about what public banking is, to learn more about the bill. You can find talking points for your representative. You can find most frequently asked questions like Public Banking 101 if we want to know the basics about public banking. So if you are curious, if this is the first time you hear about public banking, and if you're curious about it, please go to our website and look for documents. We have also lots of videos. We have people talking about why they support a public bank, why they will support this legislature, this bill at this legislature. And if you're curious, please go and look for that information. And if you already know about it and want to support us, please, by all means, talk about it with your friends, and get involved and stay involved.
So,
Yes.
if I remember correctly, I think there's only one state in the country that has a public
One
bank?
public bank, yes,
one.
that is the state of North Dakota.
North Dakota, right?
And this bank has been around for over 100 years. I think either last year or the year before it, I can't remember. I think it was founded in 1919.
Wow.
Or 1920. I think it was 1919. So it's been around for over 100 years, and it's been making money for North Dakotans.
See?
For a long time, I don't know if they still do, but they had student loan programs. They develop, in partnership with the community banks, they develop, because it's not a retail bank like
Right.
I mentioned. You cannot go, in North Dakota, you cannot go and open an account there or personally ask for a loan there. But they have partnering programs with the credit unions and with the community banks. And they have developed loan programs that are specifically targeting the specific problems in North Dakota. From the top of my head, I remember reading about one program for housing for students of physical therapy. I think they had identified lack of physical therapists, and they wanted to encourage students to study physical therapy. And they developed housing, affordable housing for students, from what I remember. And they have supported their farmers. Actually, the Bank of North Dakota was born as a farmers' bank. When they were sick and tired of the bankers in Chicago and in other places, big bankers just lending them at really expensive, really high interest rates. So it started as a farmer's bank, and it developed into a bank that supports all sorts of businesses, including, of course, agriculture.
So there's so much flexibility and room for creativity in public banking, and one of the things that makes that possible is that a public bank is not tied down by the federal government's rules, right?
Well, it abides by by a charter. It can be federally chartered or state chartered. So it does follow the charter rules.
Okay.
But what it doesn't abide to is to the whims of the shareholders
There you go.
and big investors. It doesn't respond to them. It responds to the needs of New Mexicans, and that's why it's so important not just to help us pass this bill, but like most everything that are worth it, passing them is the first obstacle, the first hurdle, but then many more come.
Yeah.
And one thing to ensure that the public bank will remain public, not just in name, but in reality, and is by having people taking ownership of that bank. It's our bank. It's your bank. It's us New Mexicans' bank. And I mentioned that it will be managed by a board of directors. Well, the board of the directors will be appointed, and this is all in the bill. I should have had a copy here, but they are appointed by the governor, but they are selected. They are elected by the community. So the best way to ensure that we have a board that responds to the needs of New Mexicans is to make sure that each one of those potential board members is as good as the other one.
Exactly.
So when whoever appoints them does that, everyone will do their job. Everyone will be responding to New Mexico's needs, to the needs of New Mexican residents. And the only way to ensure that is to take ownership of the bank and remain committed, remain involved, remain engaged in this bank.
So we've got about a minute left. Any final instructions?
Well, I would like to read, my colleague Sarah Manning, who is the co-coordinator of outreach. She wasn't able to be here. She was a little under the weather, but she wrote a special request, and I will read it. She said she's asking, please help us bring more access to financing for local businesses, startups, innovations in agriculture, new technologies, and community investments such as improvements to local health clinics, libraries, cold storage for local farm produce, and so many more creative ways to improve our local prosperity. House Bill 75 will bring our state revenues, taxes, fees, and fines home to New Mexico, as opposed to being stored in Wall Street and global investments. Yes. Let's invest our money in our citizens. Please ask your representative to vote do pass on House Bill 75.
Rebecca Jasso-Aquilar, thank you so much, and give our best to Sarah Manning as well. And we wish you the very best, and we're ready to help push this bill
Let's
over the
do
finish
that.
line.
Let's do
it. New
Thank
Mexico
you.
needs a public
Thank you
bank.
so much.
Yes, thank you again.
Thank
all right.
you.
Now, Sweet Nothin. Thank you all for tuning in, but it's time for music from Sweet Nothin, and they're going to do a song called I Don't Mind, and we'll see you next week.
I really like you. I think I love you. Don't wanna fight you. Just wanna touch. I don't mind what you wanna do. I feel fine when I'm next to you. I really like you.
I changed my mind. I had to come back again. We've got more that we need to share with you today. And back with us is our director, Tom Dent. Some interesting things happened in the last few days that you need to know about. Up in at the federal building here on Monday, it was, the Stop the War Machine held a demonstration. If you've been asleep, hiding under a rock, not paying attention to the news, there's a lot of saber rattling going on as we push towards possibly getting into war with who? Russia.
Yeah.
Over Ukraine. And we want to send a message, a loud and clear message. We don't need any war, Tom.
Now we need to stop the saber rattling. And last week there was a protest up at the state legislature at the Roundhouse for rent ceiling.
Right.
A number of groups were up there, the People's Coalition for Fair Housing and a couple other groups. And you were going to be up there, but you got sidetracked.
Yeah, I wanted to be up there for that real badly. I was, in fact, invited to speak there, but something happened and changed my schedule, just turned it on its head.
Well, there's a lot going on. We're preparing for a blood drive at the Peace Center, and one of our Pajolo groups, Veterans for Peace, went up to Los Alamos along with Santa Fe Veterans for Peace and a number of other groups. And what was that about, Jim?
Well, what that was the Los Alamos Labs, which is the home of the atomic bomb, is now being retrofitted to create a whole new class of nuclear weapons. And this is a direct violation of an international treaty that the United States signed on to. There should be no new nuclear weapons. And the hypocrisy of it all is you keep telling places like Iran and North Korea, stop firing missiles, you can't develop a missile program and all those things, and yet the United States is violating an international treaty. Lead by example, U.S., and that's the message that we wanted to deliver up at Los Alamos last week. And so San Francisco Vets for Peace organized a statewide demonstration, and we just need to keep that pressure going.
Well, Santa Fe Veterans for Peace is very instrumental, and Ken Meyer, who we're trying to get on the show next week or pretty soon, is pretty nationally known. He brought a lot of people in for the 40th anniversary of Nagasaki. People like the Reverend John Deere, Medea Benjamin, Amy Goodman, people like that, and he's very active. He's very well known, as is our own Sally Alice Thompson, who founded the Albuquerque chapter for Veterans for Peace with her husband Donald.
Yeah. And that's a really important observation in August, is the observation of the bombs being dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the United States government that almost devastated that entire country. Mm-hmm. And I had the privilege of attending the 23rd anniversary observances in Japan. I was there for a whole month for a conference that traveled all over the country. And we need to just keep this up. Keep raising awareness about the devastation. If you think that nukes are a good idea, I invite you to visit Japan and see what happened. And since then, they've developed weaponry that is 50 times more powerful, 100 times more dangerous, and it's just got to stop.
Mm-hmm. And a few good groups that you can contact if you want more information about stopping nuclear waste or stopping nuclear armament development, or CARD, Citizens Against Radioactive Dumping. Don Hancock at the Southwest Research and Information Center is one of the prime experts on this. He's been studying this for 30 or 40 years. And we're going to have the Los Alamos Study Group on the show next week, and there's a very good possibility that very well-known local comedian Sarah Kennedy is going to be on the show next week, doing a little interview and a 10-minute stand-up routine.
That's right. That's going to be exciting, too, because one of our interns is going to have a chance to just stand here and observe and rub elbows with, a seasoned comedian and maybe we'll get him to do something as well. So we're looking forward to Sarah being here next week.
And if you want to stop by Studio 519, we could use an audience for Sarah.
Sure.
Sarah will probably bring her own audience. I don't know.
We'll put a chair out for you, so come on by. Before we get away, I just want to go back. When Joaquin Baca was here earlier, we were talking about, what's happening with rental properties in Albuquerque, and that demonstration last week up at Santa Fe is such an important thing. We need rent control in this town. We need rent control in this state, for that matter. Something that's going to put a cap on the amount that people are being required to pay. There's an article in one of the papers today here that says, for decades, economic refugees from the East Coast and California have flocked to Albuquerque because of its affordable housing market. Our rents were reasonable, and now Albuquerque is quickly losing its reputation as an affordable sanctuary. That's bad news for us, and we need to get ahead of that. Put pressure on state government, put pressure on local government to enact rent control here and let these landlords, especially those predatory landlords, know that the rules of the game have got to be changed if we're going to keep this a safe and affordable place to live.
You mentioned refugees. A lot of people from fires and other disasters, and people are looking at Albuquerque as the place to live right now. Another thing that I've been following for a long time is there's a big plan to turn Albuquerque, especially northeast Albuquerque, into the senior retirement center of the Southwest. Those are other factors I mentioned on another show. We have this huge team of techs coming in to work on nuclear development, and the movie industry and stuff like that is factors that the gentrification and the rents are going up, but there's they're trying to bring a lot of tons of senior citizens into this town.
Stay tuned, everybody. There's a lot more happening, and we'll be back with you again next week on That Saturday Show. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Jim.
Until the next time, it's time to say goodbye. When you out here in the streets, keep it real, 505. We love everybody, we just want to let you know. Thanks for tuning in to That Saturday Show.